engage your conscious mind so you can go about your day-to-day business. 1. 2, coming back to this room. 3, being aware of your feet on the floor and your body in the chair. 4, behind your eyes now. And 5, eyes open and wide awake. Any questions?
I have a question, sorry.
Yes.
How does that from a classical induction?
How does it differ from a classical induction?
Well, you say that that particular induction works for you as opposed to other inductions you might have been taught in your 3 various therapeutic approaches or courses. What's different?
It's a bit crafty, really, because I used to be referred by a general practitioner. He would refer patients of his to me for help that represented his most difficult patients, suffering from chronic conditions, neurological diseases, Parkinson's, epilepsy, alcoholism. And he wasn't satisfied with just giving them medication constantly. And he studied hypnosis. He didn't have time to do it himself, so he asked me to help him with it. And these patients represented those that found it very, very difficult to go into an altered state of consciousness, found it difficult to accept the idea of relinquishing control, because that's how they saw it. They were trying to maintain control all the time, particularly people with Parkinson's disease. They're trying to hang on to control and they're losing it. So to actually say to someone like that, let go, is very difficult for them to do. So you give them something else to focus their attention on. Other people have an objection to the very idea of hypnosis. When you say to someone, I'm remembering a case now of a woman that asked for my help, and when she presented herself and I asked her to sit down, she said, "You're not going to hypnotise me, are you?" So I thought, how do I get around this? So I said, no, I'm not going to hypnotise you. I use that method. I say, I just want you to listen and focus your attention on what you can hear. Actually, it was the first time I used this technique, and it worked. It worked so well, I could hypnotise that woman just by changing the tone of my voice. She was a perfect candidate. So that's how well I know that it works. Try it. Go along with the formal induction. I'll be interested in what your opinion is, Lorna, on what you've heard today, because you practice a form of therapy that I'm not familiar with. What do you call it?
Quantum healing.
Okay, so how does quantum healing work?
Well, it's really a 3-part process. The first part is whatever's going on in your conscious mind. I think of the conscious mind as like, if you think of consciousness as the body, the conscious mind to me is the skin. It's an interface between your external world and your internal. And the skin doesn't really know anything about the organs or how it even functions. So people, through conversing with them, the pre-talk, they tell you how they feel, how they perceive things, their belief systems, and all that kind of stuff. So that's just conscious mind. And it has no idea what's going on in the subconscious. And the subconscious is really all levels of consciousness. In a traditional sense, it's thought of as the silly part of us that just does things because it has no other reasons that we can't figure out. But really, to me, it's everything. It's like a library. It's like your soul's history of everything, past, present, future, everything. And so speaking with the conscious mind, you then, or the client gets to identify, or the subconscious is able to identify what needs to be shown. It's like going in a library and pulling out the information. So if you have these belief systems, or this has happened, well, the history is within the unconscious. And so then that part is what shows up in the regression. So whether it's something from this lifetime or childhood or some past thing, and oftentimes it's linked to our parents and their stuff that we've taken on, especially in the womb. And then the latter part of the session is directly speaking with the subconscious mind or the higher self, and it tells you, it's like a story. The beginning, once upon a time, then all the filler stuff, and then she lived happily ever after. So it puts it all together for you. So it's another form of hypnosis, but it's more direct with. And so what Terry has just done, there are lots of clients who have watched the old black and white movies, you know, where there's the doctor that, or someone with the watch, and then next thing you know, they've lost control and they're doing all these silly things that you see in movies. So they do have resistance. So what I quite liked about what you've said is it totally bypasses that resistance. Because if you try the traditional method, they'll be, oh, I can hear a car outside, or I can hear this, or I can hear that. But what Terry's saying is, yeah, go with the car outside, and then it takes you through that resistance.
When I sit down to put this into practice with a client, and it may be in a clinic or it may be in their own home, when I used to do one-to-one therapy, I would sit and listen to the environment and pick out those subtle signs that you don't normally hear, like the ticking of a clock on the wall and the hum of a fridge. Now, in this room, it's very, very quiet. Very few sounds you can pick up on. The only one I could pick up on from outside was the passing track. Any sound you use as a hook, and unless you've already figured out how the method works, I'll tell you how it works. While you've got the conscious mind focusing on where you ask it to focus, focusing on the car outside, you're delivering a subliminal message to the unconscious mind. You're saying each time you shift the focus of your attention, you go deeper. It's the subtlety of the hidden suggestion to the unconscious that does the trick.
Also, the focus on the noise is trance-inducing in itself, because hypnosis is nothing but internal focus. So
That's
whether
right.
you focus on not focusing or focus on something, that focus is going to get you.
Yeah. Now, what interests me about your work, apart from the fact that I don't really know much about how the name came into being or how it's applied in practice, but you've referred several clients to Andy and I where you've not been able to deal with what you suspect to be negative entities. So perhaps you can enlighten us and explain what's missing in dealing with that.
What's missing is that the person that created quantum healing, number one, did not believe in negative entities.
Really? I didn't know that.
She absolutely did not believe in any negative entities. All aliens are benevolent, everything is wonderful, and it's really not true. And so there's nothing factored in to test that. And the reality is it's another form of regression work, past life regression. And even with attachments, you don't know if the past life that is being spoken of is the actual client or the attachment or the entity. And so oftentimes things will show up. Traditionally, they're taught to just kind of ignore them. But me, through my life experiences, which is, I'm also a shamanic practitioner, I've had to personally walk through a lot of darkness. So I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. But what happens, I find in the session, is that things will show up. And I find earthbounds or lost spirits or whatever labels we want to use for someone who's actually had a life and died but have not moved on. Sometimes they just get stuck and they hang about. And they're quite relatively easy, I find anyway, to move on. But my experiences when it became demonic, I could not get them to move on. And one client said to me, he knows everything that you're going to ask me before you ask me. And I would try and it would be a battle, and they lie so much. And I just found it was wonderful when I met Terry, because I could refer them Because at the time I thought, I'm going to take training in how to do this. And the minute I said that, psychic attacks left, right and centre in my sleep, waking state. It was just awful and a little bit intimidating. So I thought, you know, it's nice to have you guys, because years ago I read 30 Years Among the Dead. I must have read that in the 70s.
Yeah.
So I think somehow I've always kind of had a bit of a...
Anyone here not familiar with that work? Carl Wickland? 30 Years Amongst the Dead? Classic. Get a copy.
Yeah, you can get it for free on the internet now, or you can buy a copy. It's brilliant. It's a psychiatrist who works with his wife, somewhat similar to how they work.
He wasn't, well, he became a psychiatrist. He was trained as a medical practitioner. It was when he was a student and he was being taught dissection on a cadaver. And he went home to his wife, and the spirit of that owned the dead body followed him home and said, why are you cutting me up? And that's how it started. It's a fantastic read. It's a good read. Chicago Psychiatric Hospital.